Alright gang, so Blast Furnace, Phase 2, Hard Exposed. These are the elements that we're going to be looking for that are going to go on during this phase. Starting with the Primal Elementalist. There's going to be 4 of them. I'm not sure how they're going to be exposed and how they're coming, but I would imagine that since the stage is like a big rectangle with the furnace at the north end at 12 o'clock, they're going to come in some fashion either from the right, left, or center. So what I did was just a basic drawing of how we want to kind of set up our stack positions of where we're going to be. Now, the element that they have is that the Primal Elementalist cannot be damaged until the Slag Elemental, which spawns every 45 seconds, comes along. It's going to target an individual, and then that individual has to lead it over to our target. So what I was figuring we could do is something like, based on how they come out, so if they're not positioned in line, they're positioned in like different square around the perimeter or something of that nature. We'll just mark one and we'll just do like the upper first left corner first. And that'll be Skull. And so at that point, you get targeted by the Slag Elemental, which is the red. You move it over to 1, and then at that point, range has to blow it up. Then when it dies, it explodes, causing Slag Bomb, which does damage and destroys the shield that's on that Primal Elementalist. At that point, when the shield drops, then all DPS has to switch into the target and immediately burn it as quickly as possible. Now, as far as our positioning here to where the elementalists are, the PE is, we'll just adjust accordingly once we're into it and we've got a couple of reps on it. But pretty much what I'm thinking is that range is going to have to kind of be in its own area, and then melee and the tanks are going to have to be in their own area, with some healing spread between the two of them so that way we take care of what we need. Now, the security guards are going to stay in the fight. They're going to keep showing up. They keep throwing down defense. So what we're going to do is make sure that, we're tanking them properly onto one side or the other based on what we need to do. We might have to have a tank on each side, for example, to pick them up as they go and then bring them over or something like that, or we can mash into the middle. But they can also be mind controlled by a priest, and they have a Slay Elementalist ability that upon being mind controlled can be used on the Primal during the time when the shield, I believe, is not active. Now, during the time once the shield's down, all damage needs to focus into the PE, into the Primal Elementalist, until it decides to cast its only real active spell, which is to regenerate the shield. It's called Reactivate Earth Shield. Now, it does have a healing function, so we're going to have a dedicated purge or offensive interrupt that stops that to go off. Naturally, they suggest purge, so a shaman would be dedicated to it, and then upon the casting, they need to immediately remove it so that way there's no healing going back into the primal. Another element that will be present will be the fire caller. It does a volatile fire function that is random, and if you get it, you need to move away from the group. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. So if you get it cast on you, DVM will call it out. You'll probably get a bubble above your head. Get out of the fight. They also have, though, cauterized wounds, which is actually a heal that can be put on anything. So they can put it on the security guard. They can put it on another fire caller if they come out, in volume. Or it can be put on the Primal Elementalist. So whenever that occurs, we need to make sure that we have a dedicated interrupt. So we'll probably put 1 to 2 people plus the tanks on that. So that way we know we can always get it done, and if, for example, the tanks use both of theirs, then they can just call it out. And that's a majority of what you're going to be seeing. The idea is to go through each one of them until they're all down. Once they're all down, then that'll rotate into the next phase. Tanking responsibilities during this. I'll go ahead and go over those right now. You're going to have to make sure that you take the security guards and the fire callers a bit away from the current Primal Elementalist target. So that gives me the impression, for example, that they're going to probably be it's going to be like a 4-corner type of thing. The Primal Elementalists and the Slag Elementals cannot be tanked because the Primals are going to be stationary, I believe, and the Slag Elementals are going to target and then follow whoever they targeted. Fire callers can be interrupted from their cauterized wounds and lava burst casts when possible. So, and the fire callers can also be stunned. So in function, you have 2 stunnables that you can use on this one. You have an interrupt and you have your stun, and then other people can follow that up too. So fire callers can be really well controlled throughout the encounter. Damage dealer, your responsibilities are to kill slag elementals properly in their position once they're over by the elemental. Upon doing so, then you switch your damage into the elemental when the shield is down, and then burn the target's health as much as possible until the shield gets reproduced. Then after that, melee DPS will be responsible for taking care of the fire crawlers and the security guards, which we'll have off to the left or to the right, or based on wherever positions we need, maybe even in the center of the room. We'll just have to note that once we get into the position of the encounter and start adjusting accordingly. All damage must go into the primal elementalist upon the damage shield being removed. And remember to interrupt and dispel as often as possible on the cauterized wounds. Like I said before, involving the dispel for the reactive earth shield, that's going to be a dedicated person with a backup, so that'll be handled with ease. Remember that you will be fixated by the slag elemental, so make sure that you appropriately deal with it. Sometimes we have late movement when we get fixated by different things that we're fighting. So make sure that you adjust accordingly and get it over there so that way we can take it out properly. And finally, if you are within the burn attack from the blast or you are targeted by the volatile fire, you're going to want to use the defensive cooldown at that point if you're within the volatile fire or you're within the blast, because the damage is going to be pretty critical. It recommends for the healer's responsibilities that the tanks have a dedicated healing. Watch for the Heart of the Mountains energy bar. It's going to be continuing to do blast just like it did during phase 1, as it will continue during phase 3. So you got to make sure you pay attention for it. You can be fixated as a healer, so watch out for that. If you're within the blast, also make sure that you use a personal survivability cooldown so that way you'll survive through that damage, okay? I'm going to move on to phase 3, and that video will be posted shortly. If you enjoyed the video, please click like below, and on we go.